From the JAMA Network, this is JAMA Oncology Author Interviews. Conversations with authors exploring the latest clinical research, reviews, and opinions featured in JAMA Oncology.
Hello and welcome to our listeners around the world. You are listening to JAMA Oncology Author Interviews. Thanks for joining us. I am Dr. Vivek Subbiah, medical oncologist, Chief of Early Phase Drug Development at Sarah Cannon Research Institute, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm also the JAMA Oncology podcast host for today and the web editor for JAMA Oncology. Welcome to today's podcast. Today, we are joined by lead authors of a study published by researchers from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and international collaborators. Their research, spanning over 3 decades and more than 230,000 participants, explores the relationship between long-term physical activity and the risk of digestive system cancers. The findings challenge traditional thinking about how much exercise is needed for cancer prevention and highlight the power of consistency over intensity. We are excited to dive into the science, the surprises, and the practical takeaways from this important work. Today, we have 2 esteemed authors of this study. The title of the study is Consistent Adherence to Physical Activity Guidelines and Digestive System Cancer Risk and Mortality. We have Dr. Zhang and Dr. Giovannucci from Harvard School of Public Health. Again, please, Yiwen, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, your background, and the research you do, and same thing with Dr. Giovannucci.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. My name is Yiwen Zhang. I obtained my PhD from the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, majoring in nutrition and epidemiology, and now I'm working as a postdoc in the same institution with Ed.
Hi, I'm Ed Giovannucci. I have a medical degree and also a PhD in epidemiology and nutrition. I have some training in pathology, but most of my work is as a nutritional epidemiologist at the Harvard T.H. School of Public Health.
Thank you so much. So our broad listeners, can you explain in a few sentences the purpose of the study?
I'll start. Yes, the study was to look at physical activity and cancers of the digestive system. So this includes actually from the mouth to the rectum and including the liver, pancreas, and gallbladder, which actually these cancers account for 40% of cancer mortality worldwide. And physical activity is known to be protective for these cancers. But we were interested in looking more deeply at how much physical activity you need to maximally reduce your risk and how long you need to do it. So we tried to get more details on this pretty well-established association.
Thank you so much. So what inspired you and your team to specifically focus on the link between physical activity and digestive system cancers as opposed to other cancer types?
Well, physical activity has been associated with other cancer types, including breast cancer. But in our data and in other studies, the association is strongest for the digestive system cancers. That's where the association seems to be clearest. So that's why we focused on that. And obviously, digestive system cancers have multiple risk factors individually, so they're not all the same. But it does seem that physical activity does have a common effect on all of these cancers.
Thank you. Your studies tracked over 231,000 patients for up to 32 years. What were some of the biggest challenges in collecting and analyzing such long-term and such large-scale data?
I guess we are lucky we have the Harvard team in the training, and they have been collecting and follow up all these patients throughout these 32 years. So they have organized the data in a very clean way. So we as the investigator have good access to the data and we can easily organize the data and analyze it.
Got it. I'm reading the paper, and one of your key findings is that consistently meeting the recommended physical activity level, about 17 MET hours per week, substantially reduces digestive system cancer risk, and that doing much more doesn't add further benefit. Why do you think consistency matters more than intensity or volume?
Well, we don't know precisely why that's the case, but we do know that cancers develop over many, many years or decades. So very few studies had examined consistency over a long period of time. And we actually looked over 32-year period of time. So we had repeated measures every 2 years of their physical activity. And as you mentioned, individuals that were consistently active over this time had the lowest risk of cancer. But when we looked at consistently active as 17.5 METs, which is around, you can walk, let's say, 5 hours a week to reach that, or even 2 or 3 times higher than that, had the same reduction. So we don't know precisely why, but it seems that once you reach a certain level of activity, you don't get further benefit by doing more.
I see. Thank you so much. So again, in those same lines, traditional dose response analysis suggested optimal benefit at much higher activity levels, but your approach factored in long-term consistency. Can you explain your method, how your methodology differed, and why this matters for interpreting the results?
So our study, the unique our study is that we have repeated measure of physical activity every 2 years. So we will be able to compute this consistency variable, while most the other previous study that examine this dose response relationship, they only have one time baseline physical activity measure. So people can be increasing or decreasing throughout the follow-up. And by having more multiple physical active measures, we will have a more accurate physical activity measures throughout the follow-up. This is a joint analysis between consistency and the total amount of physical activity. So we will be able to looking at people who consistently performing 17 match hour per week compared to participants consistently performing a much higher amount, while the previous studies does not have that data access to that type of analysis.
That's correct. And I'll just add that studies that have only one measure, so if you ask a person how much you're doing physical activity, not surprisingly, it turns out that individuals who do higher levels of activity have tended to do it for a longer period of time, more consistently. For example, like they may be marathon runners or something. So if you just have that one bit of data, like the amount, that actually is correlated with the consistency. So it can fool you. You might think that, oh, you need to do a very high amount, but actually it's only really telling you that the consistency is the more important aspect. So it's not the amount. So looking at the two together, as Yiwen mentioned, we were allowed to tease out independent effects, and consistency seemed to win out, essentially.
Thank you so much for really clarifying the study's unique approach here. I think it'll be very useful for our audience and listeners here. So, the next question I have is, were there any findings that surprised you or challenged your expectations, especially regarding specific types of digestive cancers or subgroups within your study population?
I think our main finding was somewhat surprising because most analyses had just looked at the dose response, and I actually did expect to see more would be better. So the very clear finding that there was, once you reach a certain amount of activity, doing more, at least for digestive system cancers, gave you no added benefit. That did surprise me somewhat because we often think more is better, but that's not what we found in this case.
Thank you so much. Again, based on your research, what practical advice would you give to clinicians, public health professionals, or individuals aiming to reduce the risk of digestive system cancers?
I would say that if people think that they have to do a very high amount of activity, like, run an hour every day, very few people can do that consistently. So they might get discouraged if, like, the typical New Year's resolution people try. But what's nice about this finding is that people could, I think, use moderate levels and get big benefits as long as they do it consistently. So they have to find something that they can incorporate into their lifestyle. Perhaps it's walking 30 minutes a day. That has a big impact. But the thing is, you need to do it almost every day and for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. So it's more like encourage people, you don't have to get the benefit in order to do a lot of amount, but it's more the consistently performing a moderate amount throughout a long period of time that can already offer you the optimum benefits.
Thank you so much. And I'll give you time to conclude this by giving some future research questions or any parting thoughts to our audience. Maybe first you can go, Ed, and then Yiwen can go next after that.
I think what I'm most interested in relates to one of your questions about why consistency is more important, which we didn't really find out why. We just found that consistency seems to be more important. So we're looking more at, like, for example, biomarkers or effects on inflammation, insulin resistance, and some of the mechanisms that may explain why the consistency is important. So I think that's what we need to do next.
To add on that, I think so our population is made up of mostly adult and white professionals. So it will be important in the future to examine this association in other population, whether it's younger population or other racial ethnic groups.
Thank you both for joining us today and sharing your insights on the long-term impact of physical activity on digestive system cancer risk. Your research not only deepens our understanding of cancer prevention, but also offers practical, achievable guidance for individuals and healthcare professionals alike. To our broad listeners of JAMA Oncology, remember, from this study, it's not about extreme workouts, but about staying consistently active over time. We hope today's conversation inspires you to make a movement a regular part of your life. Until next time, stay curious and keep moving forward. I'm Dr. Vivek Subbiah, and I've been speaking with Doctors Yiwen Zhang and Ed Giovannucci about their publication, Consistent Adherence to Physical Activity and Guidelines and Digestive System Cancer Risk and Mortality. You can find a link to the article in this episode's description. This episode was produced by Daniel Musisi at the JAMA Network. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com or search JAMA Network wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
This content is protected by copyright by the American Medical Association with all rights reserved, including those for text and data mining, AI training, and similar technologies.